my friends would be like, have you ever seen the show Schitt's Creek? And I'd be like, yeah, no, haven't watched it, heard of it. They'd be like, you really need to watch it. And I started watching it, and it is almost spot on like my family.
Dan Levy treated the writer's room as open therapy sessions, he called them, where they were mining real experiences they had for stories and characters. And I think because of this, they could reach sort of real emotional depth instead of it just feeling like surface level comedy.
All of a sudden, I'm not getting rest because I'm just binge watching the show. I think this is actually not, unhealthy for me at this point. Advocacy matters. Even the act of advocacy has been rebranded to influence. But advocacy has been a core part of marketing and brand forever, for anything.
And that is the buyer's journey, right? Not to be too, on the nose, but it's that is what it is, right? It does take a nudge.
This is the best thing I've ever seen.
That. Let's talk about that.
Listen to this. Listen to this.
Memorable?
Well, then be less boring.
Boring?
Remarkable.
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 Oh.
I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. You're listening to Remarkable. This week, we're talking marketing lessons from Schitt's Creek.
Mrs. Rose, there are people here from the government.
Baby, it's crazy. People are just taking our stuff.
Leave your finances to me, said son of a bitch.
I'm still trying to wrap my mind around what kind of a sick person wants to get paid to destroy another person's life. Destroy another person's life!
There is a very small amount set aside for you, and one asset the government has allowed you to retain.
The kids.
The children are dependents, Moira. You bought a small town in 1991, John.
Yes, I bought that as a joke for my son.
With the help of our special guest, Chief Marketing Officer at Forter, Jason, how are you?
Ian, I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me here. I'm excited about the chat today.
So excited to chat Schitt's Creek, truly the darling of the last, 10 years of television. Why the heck did you pick Schitt's Creek to talk about today?
So I wasn't one of the early watchers of the show, and it was really interesting how the show came to me. So I had my friends randomly, one every 2 or 3 months would be like, have you ever seen the show Schitt's Creek? And I'd be like, yeah, no, haven't watched it, heard of it. They'd be like, you really need to watch it. And I started watching it, and it is almost spot on my family. Not our family experience, but I'm very clearly David. And my sister is very clearly Alexis. My dad is very clearly Johnny. My mother is very clearly Moira. My brother is Stevie.
Oh my gosh.
And it's personalities to a T, where when I started watching it, I went to some friends. I was like, did you? And they're like, that's why we asked. We didn't know if you knew this. And it's ridiculously close. And there are things my sister would come home and be like, well, remember when that happened in Bali? And then I would be watching Schitt's Creek, and it'd be when I would escape the Yakuza, and I'd be like, this is too real. This is too on. And it became one of those things that at the beginning was, oh my goodness, this is such a joke because it's my family. And then as I went on with the show, the heart that the show has is timeless, and you can watch it over and over again and still be moved by it and be moved by it in different ways. And so this is one of those pieces of content, I would say, that you carry with you. And so when the question was asked, what type, how would you draw conclusions from it? This was the first thing that came to mind. I was like, it's got to be Schitt's Creek, because I feel like it is something that has affected so many people in either a big way or in a really light way, but in some way, shape, or form. So I love this show.
And before we get into the rest of it, tell us about your role as CMO of Forter.
So, chief marketing officer, right? So, I look after our overall brand, our positioning, our messaging, how we show up in the marketplace. And what's been interesting for me here, and for those that don't know Forter, we're in decisions AI. So we help companies make decisions when it comes to fraud, to payment, to risk, and overall trust in the customer experience through the use of AI and our identity network. But this is a company that works in a space that is so tech driven and tech forward that no one in the space has really become customer centric and customer forward and share the stories of the customers. And so that's my role here is how do I elevate who the customer is, what he, she, or they do, how we work with them, and what impact they have on their organizations based on the partnership. And it's been a really, really fulfilling journey for the first 10 months, and I'm excited for what's coming down the pike.
Meredith, what the heck is Schitt's Creek?
So Schitt's Creek is about a wealthy family that loses it all and has to move to a town that they bought as a joke. So it's a sort of riches to rags story, fish out of water. The comedy really comes from the contrast between this extreme privilege and ordinary small town life. And because I know we want to talk about the different personalities between characters, for my part, I wanted to focus on the development of these main core characters of the Rose family. The show was created by Dan Levy and his dad, Eugene Levy, and I really feel like the success of the characters comes from one critical decision they made, which was they decided to develop the characters into fully fledged, complex people before working on the plot itself. Dan had said, until we know everything about these people, we're not done. So he wanted these characters to have be complex, like have contrasting parts of their personalities. And apparently Dan Levy treated the writer's room as open therapy sessions, he called them, where they were mining real experiences they had for stories and characters that they wanted to use in the show. And I think because of this, they could reach sort of real emotional depth within the plot instead of it just feeling like surface level comedy, sort of sitcom-y. And I think one of the things that really helped the characters feel real is that Eugene and Dan modeled used their sort of like real life father-son relationship to inspire Johnny and David's relationship. And from there, character development was really highly collaborative. So they worked super closely with Catherine O'Hara to develop the mother's character, Moira Rose. And together they came up with like her theatricality, her ever-changing wigs, and her really eccentric accent.
I apprenticed costume design under Stan McCoulier. I'm sure he'd agree this toggery is the perfect tribute to the common woman.
I just laugh because it's just when you talk about her accent and you're just like, it's the funniest thing ever. It's
so good. Well, it's funny because it's like, it's almost like, it's like the idea of like the transatlantic accent,
yeah,
but like to an extreme. And then she's like elongating certain syllables, pausing in weird places. But I thought what was interesting is like on the surface, it's really funny because it's a made up accent. And sometimes it's like mixes of different accents and there's inconsistency in it. But at the same time, it's kind of like symbolic. She's having this like identity crisis.
Yeah, totally.
And that's sort of like where that sort of like baseline, like underneath all of the funny parts, there's kind of like truth to it all.
Yeah, she's always been pretending to be someone else, so of course she has a made-up accent, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then for like Alexis's character, they brought in Annie Murphy, and she was like kind of unknown at the time. But Annie used a lot of her, like Dan called it, her like her creative instinct for her character. So they started with an idea for someone based on Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie, sort of like these what do you call them, socialite kind of early 2000s, really like they're kind of famous for no reason kind of thing. And then they use Annie Murphy's vocal fry and her hand gestures and her physicality, and that really sort of fleshed out the character. But Dan said that her character arc was the one that he was most proud of because she goes from being like pretty self-centered to pretty selfless and kind. And you kind of learn throughout the show, she has these sort of like kind of almost throwaway lines, and you get the feeling that like, oh, she's had to raise herself. Like her parents have basically neglected her, and she's had to come out of some really hairy situations on her own. And it is sort of humorous, but also like you start to feel compassionate for her.
Yeah, the actual longest relationship was a 3-month affair with a Saudi prince, but for the last 2 months of that, I was trapped in his palace trying to get to an embassy.
And so, Jason, I know you mentioned you are closest to sort of David's character. How do you feel about his arc? And was it, as extreme as, Alexis's, or, what's your read on it?
One of my favorite things about all the characters, though, is whether they're from the town of Schitt's Creek or they are like the family, to me, they're all going through this journey of finding them and believing in themselves. This is a story about self-confidence at the end of the day, and Alexis building the confidence that she needed to start her own business, to pursue her education, and to even admit that like she didn't maybe like have a driver's license and those types of things, to then achieve them. And you look at David with Rose Apothecary, with finding love with Patrick, and that journey of he had to love himself in order to then achieve that in his life. And I think each of these characters goes through that journey in their own way, shape, or form of finding true self-confidence and self-belief. And Stevie with stepping up and working with Johnny on the franchise, and all of them go through that. And so I do think they have that extreme transformation. I think Alexis is so front and center, though, right? With like how the character manifested in the first season versus you look at the final season and the decisions that she makes. This was a character that was really well looked after by Annie Francis, and but all of them go on this journey. And I think that to me is where everybody finds connection in the show, whether that is conscious or subconscious. It's seeing themselves in that kind of coming of age story.
Let's get into some marketing lessons from Schitt's Creek. Okay, so the first one for me is that you had to be reminded by multiple friends to see this. And I think that this is like a really important marketing lesson, right? Like we want everyone to just like, we make something great, we have a great product, service, whatever, and we just like expect people to want it. And then we market the heck out of it. And a ton of people love it. 5 stars, all these awards, all these whatevers. And then still, after all of that, Jason's sitting there like, yeah, I've heard this, whatever. What is this thing? And multiple people that you care about and love are like, dude, you got to see this. Check it out. And you're like, yeah, I'll get to it someday. And then eventually you watch it and fall in love with the show. And like that is the buyer's journey, right? Like not to be too, on the nose, but it's like, that is what it is, right? Like it does take a nudge, and whether it's a salesperson or someone or whatever, like creating the situation where it lands the softest is the best way to go. And like, I don't know what finally pushed you over the edge, Jason, but surely everyone talking about it, water cooler talk, all the awards, everything. If it didn't have any of that and those people are telling you, I don't know if you watch it, and vice versa, if it had all that stuff and people weren't, bugging you to do it, you probably wouldn't have. But the collection of all of that stuff together pushes you over the line.
Yes, and having time, right? Time and space to do it. And that's one of like the push and pull on things. And I remember I started watching it because I got sick. And so I was sitting in bed being like, what am I going to do? Right? Like I'm too sick to work actually. So let's go, right? Like, let's give this thing a shot. And then all of a sudden I'm not getting rest because I'm just binge watching. So I'm like, I think this is actually not, like unhealthy for me at this point, but you're pointing at like advocacy matters.
Yeah.
And it's such an interesting thing because even the act of advocacy has been rebranded to influence. but advocacy has been a core part of marketing and brand forever.
Yeah.
For anything. Like, you think about even like the food discovery. Somebody took a bite of something and was like, bro, you got to try this, right?
Yep.
Like, I didn't die.
Yep.
Plus, like, 2, this tastes really good. And so, like, this is, I think, coded almost into the human experience is advocacy is the root of like how we end up making decisions and choices and which way that we go. And so I think that whether it's the show itself or even inside of the show, you look at where advocacy and influence play, like it's a balance in it. And but this is core to how we all make decisions as consumers, is like, what is the context around us telling us, and where is it pointing in what directions? And discovery comes down to like, why am I going to choose one versus the other? Well, I'm going to ask somebody, what do you think?
Yeah. Another takeaway for Ian on this is creating really, really pointy characters that really, really want something is always works, right? And like, I would say that this show is one of the ultimate, like, well, surely nobody is like Moira. Like, right? Like, no, but like, first thing you say is like, this is my family, right? And I think that that's where, like, I think often marketers take a watered down approach. And then what happens is like, we have an idea and we put it up to the broader, consensus. And then everybody's like, well, I don't know, CIOs aren't really like that. Or like, I don't know, developers aren't really like that. And like, well, they don't really like that. And you're like, but that's not the point. The point is to make them pointy, to tell a story about a developer that is also, a windsurfer. And it's like, well, how like the marketer would, the naysayer would say, well, how many developers do we know that are windsurfers? It's like, I don't know, maybe it's 16 of them, but the ones who are going to really, really resonate with this story. And everyone else is just going to like the story because it's one about a windsurfer and they haven't seen that before. And like, I feel like that's what Schitt's Creek is like so good at. It's like, it's, a riches to rags story, which is great, but these characters are so pointy and they so clearly want to be doing anything but this, that it's just so fun seeing them want stuff and get it denied and then finding this other thing, which is far better. And so, far more satisfying. And like, that is just like great storytelling 101. And I feel like a lot of marketing storytelling, like we want everything to like make the person feel seen in the persona. But sometimes like the more pointy you make it, the more weird, the more absurd, it actually will resonate that much better.
I love that. Because that's kind of who we are on the inside.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah, you've got your outside voice and your outside persona, and then there's like the weird stuff you say on the inside. And like I have the luck of having a 7-year-old and now a 10-month-old, and the stuff that comes out of my 7-year-old's mouth and has for years and years and years. And I remember when she turned 3, and I have this picture of her because I was using the like leaf blower in the garage, and she came out and stood in front of it and was just like going crazy. And I was just like, oh man, I love that moment, because it's like, just keep that weirdness. That same year, like we were out at a playground, she ran up somewhere that was playing music and just started doing the robot. And I don't know where she learned that from.
Right.
But it's just one of those things. I'm like, stay strange, right? Like that's the best thing you can do, because if you're not strange, it's too safe, right? And so there's something about it, brings us back to a much more free and innocent time. And I think to your point, Ian, like the pointiness opens the door for us to truly connect with the characters.
Yep.
Versus like, how do we like regress to the mean, right? And are we covering all the bases? And does it feel safe, right? Safe is not where we make really strong emotional bonds. on the edges is where we do that, because I think on the inside, like there's a lot of edge and we've just been conditioned to not show it all the time. So it's got that childlike element to it. So I love that.
Yeah, I think it was Walt Whitman who said, "I am large, I contain multitudes," right? You know, it's like, well, go find the multitudes, right? Like go find, you know, Moira doesn't have to be exactly like my mom, but if there's things that she does that are like my mom, go, oh, my mom does that too, you know, and that's like super satisfying.
Yes.
You know, Alexis has younger sister energy, like 24/7. She's just like my buddy's younger sister in some ways, right? Doesn't mean she's like it in every way, but like in some ways she is. And those are the things that you sort of want to seek. And I think that like they focus really hard on making them different, but I think what they did so well is making them want things. And like stories are about wants, right? Like it's everybody wants something. And if you focus on the wants, then you will have a story, right? It's like, I want to open, you know, the Apothecary, which by the way, I feel like this mug could also have like been designed by David. I feel like stylistically. Yeah, like that's, that gives you thrust right in the story. Whereas I think a lot of times when we're telling stories, like we don't clearly articulate, we describe things that happen to them, not things that they want and what they had to overcome to get that. And that's when you put someone, you know, in a riches to rags story. That's great. Like, for example, you could take a CIO at a Fortune 50 company who has a 2,000 person IT team and tell a story about them that all of a sudden now they're, you know, in charge of IT at a 40 person company and they don't have a 2,000 person team. How would they make decisions differently? That's already sounds like an interesting story, right? Or like, you know, they had their budget cut 10x. Then what would they do? Like there's parallels that you could draw, I think, into the business world that set up the stakes in a similar way.
Like show me a marketer that hasn't had their budget cut 10x.
Yeah, right. Seriously.
It's part of the life truth of it. And I think part of it that is in this show also though is you don't know what they want at first. And that's a really interesting part of the journey is you kind of walk into this and it feels like maybe they want to be anywhere but where they are, but like the true like individual desires, it's just not clear. And we get to see them develop that and experience it. And I think we embrace the concept that they can change and we want them to change and evolve because that pointedness at the beginning, like it created that emotional connection where it's like, oh my gosh, isn't this person fun or isn't this circumstance funny? It piques something and then we give permission for the writers to take us on that ride.
Yeah. Other marketing or B2B lessons from our
B2B.
Good friend Schitt's Creek?
So I started in B2C and then I moved to B2B. Mm-hmm. And the reason I made that move is I had my first B2B client was on the agency side and everyone was like, well, the buyer, the company that we're selling to, the company this, the company that. And I was going around like working with our CD. And I was like, I just think they've missed it here because is the company buying or is there a person who's doing it? And it was that, and that's not like a new concept, right? But I think one of my favorite parts about the whole like life work experience is when you discover something that no one has said to you before. So it actually is a discovery in and of itself. And I was like, Eureka, they've lost the plot. Like these are people. Let's treat them like people, right? And we're not marketing a technology to a company. We're marketing a solution or whatever, a safety blanket to a person. And because at the end of the day, if they don't do it right, if they make the wrong decision, they lose their job, right? Like, tell me something more personal than that, right? What that ends up affecting. And so I look at everything through the lens of it's all consumer. It just who the consumer is a little bit different. And I think for Schitt's Creek, you have these little sub stories in the show of like the Rose Apothecary. You brought that up with the mug, which, by the way, I agree. I think you'd get that there.
For those of you watching on video, you're going to see the mug.
Are you going to tell us where you got the mug?
Oh, I have no idea. These are my wife's, the good people at Fisher Home Products, which sounds fancy. These were. She had a whole set of these. This is the last one that remains.
Oh no!
We had to get rid of Chip, the one that had a chip, because it had a chip in it, and so when you serve someone tea in a or coffee in a mug with a chip in it, you feel like a crazy person. But
I tend to look at where the chip is. I'm like, oh, they're not going to drink from that part. Like, it's fine.
That's right.
But I feel like the chip is always in the spot where the lip is going to be. And I'm like, that's just what are the odds of that? And here we go. Mine is the first tech company I worked at, Sail Through.
Oh, fun.
Which is still around, but there's cracks all through it. And the part about this is it's the size of my head. And so that's why. And I have 2 of them left of a set of, I'm not going to say how many that I took when I was on my way out. But these mugs are very important to me for that regard. So chips and all, this is going to stick around. But we don't entertain with the mugs the size of the head. But so Rose Apothecary, I think it's a distinct brand experience.
Yeah.
And that matters. Does, regardless of what you're marketing, what you're selling, what the product is, brand experience is important. And it's so interesting over my career, having seen these like ebbs and flows of points in time where people are like, it is all about the brand again. And then we move away from it. Then it's all about the brand again. I'm like, there are companies that really get that and stick with it, and good on them. But even in whether it's B2B or B2C, it has to be distinct. It has to be built for someone, and the experience has to pique emotions, and emotions are greater than function all the time. It's never about what it does, or your brand isn't the quality of the product, because quality is replicable, at least now more so than ever.
For sure.
With speed, right? And so the brand has to mean something. And I think what's been really interesting in my experience on both the agency side and on in the in-house side, not many people understand it. There aren't enough students of brand in company leadership. And so it ends up being this kind of soft concept in many places, but you need the entire leadership team to understand the import of it and to decide that they want to invest in it, knowing that this is the kind of like the tree that grows over time. Or the analogy I used to use with my team is it's a bank. You have to make deposits all the time, and withdrawals, it's like your 401k, really expensive. You pay penalties when you withdraw from that bank, when you make decisions that are counter to the brand. And so I think Rose Apothecary did that, right? It's unexpected in Schitt's Creek, but you remember opening day, there was a line around the corner. David couldn't even get in.
That's funny, yeah.
Right? And they achieved something really special with that, which I think is something that we can all keep learning from. I've got some others.
Oh God, go. I was just say whatever about Schitt's Creek or about
whatever
marketing lessons or.
I think the Rosebud Motel is a good one.
Yes,
the power of positioning, right? This went from the Schitt's Creek Motel to the Rosebud Motel, and that's like the Johnny Stevie journey, but they centered on customer service as their differentiator, and like they found where they could be unique in it. And so positioning matters, and finding something that can be uniquely ownable in your space and make you unique and different. And I again go back to like technology is a really challenging differentiator. And as somebody that has made a career of working in technology companies, I'll say something that gets me in trouble internally, and I'll say it outside, is like, there's always the push from your product team and engineering team to be like, well, this is the core differentiator. And I'm like, cool. That is 2,000 lines of code deep. Do you know how that sounds? It sounds really replicable.
Yep.
And unimportant. And it sounds like you understand that because you helped build it. I don't think that doesn't say I'm getting a raise if I buy this.
Yes, exactly right.
Right. It just doesn't tell me that. So I'm going to say no. Like, it can't be the function. It's got to be the part that connects somebody. And most people discount that in their product positioning. And I think we see that happening so much right now with AI and AI agents. Everything is AI this and AI that. And it already means nothing, right? Like, I had a conversation with somebody the other day that was like, well, this agent that does X, Y, and Z. And I was like, well, no, like that company's had that for years. It's just automation. They're like, well, it's an agent. I'm like, are we there already? We've rebranded everything that's automation as agentic. And like, that's what's happening. And so it's like the currency around these words changes so quickly. And we're in AI inflation with everything happening right now, which is really interesting. But I think going back to like the real part of like, how do you create emotional value for somebody matters. And then community, like Alexis, what she did was Singles Week. Yes. Such a good story. And this was at her point where she believed in herself, right? And she was going to make it work. But that was all grassroots that she did it from. She brought people together. She brought in the businesses. She brought in the whole community. But she found an audience. She catered to their needs, and word of mouth works, right? And that kind of goes back to the beginning, right? Advocacy. That's a forum like that. That's what has things be successful. And so there's so many things that you can find in the show that connect to work or personal life or things along those lines. But those for me, like the brand experiences, positioning, and community, those are three that stand out to me.
I think, something I didn't think about, like I don't think about often with the show, which is that the whole thing is a pun. It's called Schitt's Creek. They're literally up Schitt's Creek. Like there's obviously rolling shit and all this other stuff. Like,
oh my gosh,
it's so like, but what's so funny is like the show is so good and it rises above sort of like the pun so quickly. I think it might actually worked against it for certain viewers. I think when I originally like saw it, I thought it was like a sitcom, you know what I mean? Like a regular sitcom, and it's like a little hokey and all this stuff. And then you dig in and you're like, oh no, this is amazing. And I just think that's funny. Like it's sort of it's like when you see writers that write the name of the project before they even start writing, and they're like, oh, this is a funny name. Like, what would this show be about, right? And I just think it's sort of an interesting, I don't know, like juxtaposition that it's sort of this like lowbrow joke, that is like such a highbrow sort of comedy that sort of meets everybody in the middle.
Roland was that name and character for me that was just like too much, and too obvious in it. And as I started talking about the show with other people, they'd be like, no, like I'm actually from this part of the country, like that person exists. And they're like, the person for me that's really out of control is like David. I'm like, oh, actually, but like I know like 15 Davids. And so there's this like wild part of it, which is holy shit. Like it's universal in the character development, which is both like genius and somewhat, I would say, polarizing.
I agree. I felt like Roland, and I definitely know people like Roland too. But I I felt the same way where I was like, this is like, and I think Chris Elliott is like such a good actor, and he's so over the top in every role that he's in. But it, to me, it was like, it is like over the top, but you see where they're trying to go with all of this is like, again, making the characters as pointy as possible, that because he's so ridiculous and because they're so ridiculous, that's the way that they can start to meet in the middle. Because if you started any of them in the middle, there's no place to sort of meet, and there's no sort of change that's going to occur, and you forgive all that, right? Like, you're just like, yeah, okay, this is ridiculous, but but the show's great. And I love, that's such a great insight that you said, where it's like other people were like, oh, I feel like David's ridiculous.
But to your point though, it's like by the end of the show, like you don't see that part. You don't see the joke of Roland's shit. Like, you don't see the joke of the name.
Yeah.
All of those things, that loses all of its power. And maybe to the point of pointy characters, like that follows the same principle, right? Like it's pointy at the beginning with the name and the kind of how exaggerated some of it is, and then becomes muted in a different manner. There creates cohesion in it. And if they had started it, you had started this arc at season 3, it wouldn't work the same way. It's just not the same thing.
Yeah, I think that's sort of my final takeaway for this, is like having the audacity to like have the arc. And I feel like there's a lot of there's contrast this with like another show that's like very long running, like whatever, Always Sunny in Philadelphia or something like that, who has extremely pointy characters, and they can do 100 seasons of it because that's the whole point. The characters don't change. Like, that's the whole point of like most sitcoms, right? Is like characters don't change, circumstances do. Whereas like Schitt's Creek very clearly was not that, and they wanted to have like a television-esque, or sorry, a movie-esque, a film-esque arc for these characters, where they start one place and go to the end in the way that you would in a drama. But that's what we're mostly trying to do in B2B marketing, is tell a transformation story, right? Like, every marketer, you say before product, after product, right? Like, before I got the, whatever technology, it's like I was, things were difficult, and now things are great. So I think it's more interesting. It's not more interesting, but it's more appropriate that they did that. And that's why the show is so satisfying and it's so fun to revisit, is because that this sort of arc happens. And I think that closure is something that you would only get from closure. And you're like, look at Seinfeld. Like, people are like, oh, Seinfeld ending is so bad. Well, it's like, well, there's no, they didn't change. Of course it was going to end. It's just going to end, right? Characters don't change. That's the whole point.
No, you're right. Like, most series end in a very, like, a highly unsatisfying way.
Yeah.
And, partially that's because they don't write them to be encapsulated.
Right.
Right. Like, there was intention here around the journey, and they could have kept it going, right? Like, people would have watched, it would have been bought and rebought, but they made a really specific decision of saying, no, like, this arc is done. Like, we've taken people on the journey that we wanted to take them on. And I think, Meredith, to your story at the beginning of sharing of like the character development of like, we have to know everything about these people.
Yeah.
Like, so that's got to connect into that, and having that plan and whatnot at the beginning. But there was bravery in that act of ending it. And I remember when it was like, oh, it's going to be done, I was like, oh gosh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
Really, it's what makes it still valuable, right? It exists in that moment.
Jason, wonderful having you on the show. For our audience, you can check out Forter for all of your trust needs, identity intelligence for digital commerce, fraud, all of that. Jason, any final thoughts? Anything to plug?
Oh my goodness! So we're taking a cue from Schitt's Creek. We're focused on community this year. So we have an annual event called Impact. It's one day a year that we're turning into an always-on community for marketers, for e-commerce, for digital, for tech, for finance, to kind of bring together around the concept of trust. And so you can find more about that on our website, or you can reach out to me, LinkedIn, anywhere you want, if you want to get involved. So I'm excited about that. And here we are, taking cues from our apparently collective favorite show and doing something with it.
I love it. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much.